There were some people terrible, some people, yeah, I did okay. We had hundreds of kids, just hundreds. And one kid said, do you have any baby Ruths? No, we did not. But most of them were very nice. But it was hard to compete with the people across the street who had one of those big bins filled with large size candy bars.
And yours?
Crazy. You just can't compete. I think they got 400. I gave candy. I don't want to be one of those that, they think, oh, we hate going to that house. They give, pencils or something, which is fine. And I love that. I admire people who do that. I've never been brave enough.
We give wasabi peas.
You do? See, that's so great. Stickers, wasabi peas, that's good. Okay, well, we need to stay on track for us. So hit the arrows, right? This arrow. Okay. So we are in November now. It is Diabetes Awareness Month. November World Diabetes Day is always November 14th. I don't know what they're doing. Some years they light up the Capitol and they do things. This is their logo. It's a blue circle because it represents the sky that goes around the world that covers everybody who might have diabetes wherever they live. But diabetes, I know some people in this room might have diabetes. More and more people have diabetes. It's moving up on the list of killers in our country. But every 23 seconds, another person is diagnosed with diabetes in our country. And every 2 minutes, another person in America dies from diabetes complications. It's not usually the diabetes itself that gets us, it's the complications. And heart disease, which is the #1 killer of Americans, both men and women, people who have diabetes have 2 to 4 times the risk of having a heart attack or stroke. So we really want to take care of diabetes. If you have diabetes, let us help you. Ask us for some help so we can help, or ask your healthcare provider to refer you to a diabetes educator. Make sure your medicine's okay. Make sure your lifestyle changes that you do here are going to really help reduce risk of diabetes or help you to manage it. But carbs, talking about diabetes at the same time we talk about carbs is interesting because people with diabetes are always told, oh, don't eat carbs. Carbs are so bad. But carbs are good. It depends on what kind we have and how many we have. That's it. So we're talking about good carbs today. Probably some bad ones too. But some tips for diabetes. If you do have diabetes, they call it managing your ABCs, which is managing your hemoglobin A1C, they call it. That's the A. That's your average blood sugar over the previous 3 months. In a perfect world, we would love that to be under 6.5. That's where people are diagnosed. If you have diabetes, we're aiming for at least under 7 to reduce your risk of complications. They want you to make sure your blood pressure is good. So come into a place like this where we check your blood pressure and you change your eating style and your lifestyle and you're working on your stress. That's all going to help your blood pressure. And keep an eye on your cholesterol levels, which goes right along with everything we're doing here too. And of course, don't smoke. So get support for anything special that you might need. Make activity part of your everyday life because exercise acts like insulin and helps control your blood sugar. Follow diabetes meal plan. Oh, not a mean plan. It sometimes does feel like a mean plan, but a meal plan. See, it's almost like I did that on purpose. And yeah, lean mean plan. And then stay on top of your vaccines because people with diabetes tend to get sicker if they get the flu, if they get pneumonia, if they get COVID. So we want to stay on top of our vaccines. So we're talking about carbs, and I can't remember why I must have stuffed this in here, but we are always promoting whole food, plant-based eating. So there's plant-based, and then there's vegan. And they used to be interchangeable, but more and more, they're not always interchangeable. And sometimes you'll see plant-based used on foods that really aren't that great. Like you could say that Oreos are plant-based, but they don't really resemble a plant at all. So I don't love that. But look at plant-based versus vegan. So vegans, no meat or poultry, no seafood, no eggs or dairy products. Plant-based usually are trying to at least avoid those. Because some people say, yeah, I just want to lean more into this whole plant-based thing, but I'm not ready to not to give up meat or chicken or whatever. But also, it depends on where you're at in the spectrum. So oils generally in a vegan diet could be liberal, and a plant-based diet that could be liberal, but a whole food plant-based diet, we might want to go a little easy on our oils because we're thinking about also taking care of our heart disease and maybe our weight. So we can have them, we can have fats, but we want to kind of make them healthy. Highly processed foods, this is what kind of gets me with the whole vegan thing these days, is you got the Oreos, you got those plant-based Reese's peanut butter cup. Again, don't look anything like a plant. So there's could be some highly processed foods. So whole food plant-based, no, we try to avoid processed foods. In fact, everything I give people labels in here, those are all processed foods. We're going to have them sometimes, but we want to try to have higher fiber, less processed whenever possible. Hopefully, we're eating more foods that don't have a label than that do. Fruits, veggies, and starches are for all of those, and legumes and beans, that's where we often get a lot of our protein. So today we have lentils in that soup, that casserole has black beans. That's where we're going to get our protein. So there are some differences. Wherever you fit on the spectrum, it's fine. It's whatever works for you and your lifestyle and whatever you can do for the rest of your life. So what have you heard about carbs? I got a few things up here. What have you heard? Anything missing from my list? So they make you fat, right? They're super high calorie. They can cause diabetes. Is that true? Well, none of these are actually true. Don't have them if you have diabetes. Carbs are all junk food. They make your sugar go up. That actually can be true, because carbohydrates are what break down into sugars and make your blood sugar go up. But you know what? It's okay for our blood sugar to go up a certain amount. It's very appropriate. We eat foods, they turn into sugar, our blood sugar goes up. We just don't want it to go up too much. That's the secret right there. Anybody heard any other things about carbs that I missed? They are. Excellent. You're absolutely right. People are confused, particularly as it pertains to people with diabetes. And I remember when I was working and somebody maybe in our office would be having a piece of pie or something, and the other people would be whispering, she has diabetes. Can you believe she is eating that? Well, people with diabetes can eat whatever they want. Depending on their medication, they might be able to take insulin to cover it. Some people take insulin all the time. Some things they might just have a smaller portion. Or that person who was eating that pie might have been saving up her carbs to have that piece of pie. So let's not be too judgy on that, but people are very confused. You're right. We shouldn't be insulting anybody who's eating carbs. So if we're going to eat a plant-based diet, I think I showed this one every single time. We're eating fruits and veggies. We're eating tubers, things that grow in the ground. We're eating whole grains, and we're eating legumes or beans. All of those are carbs. So imagine people telling you, oh my gosh, you have diabetes. I hear that whole food plant-based diet is really good for you. And they could say, no way. Or their family's telling them, no way you can do that. That's all carbs. But interestingly, people who do go with a whole food plant-based diet really go all in, really cut back on the fats and the animals and even the sugars. They don't even need to worry about their carbs because their cells aren't getting all clogged up from the other foods that we eat. So I have another slide that talks about that. So just hold that thought. So carbohydrates, you're going to have a little chemistry lesson today. So you might be sorry you came for that. But carbohydrates are a long string of sugars. Remember these little things? Do kids play with these anymore?
I do. No.
You do? Good. I know my granddaughter doesn't have anything this simple. No. So they're long strings of sugars. And then when they get into our bloodstream, they break off. So now they're into single sugars. These single sugars are what get absorbed. This is what gives us our calories and our energy. And carbs are actually a great way to get energy. If this was carbs, but it was fiber, That is an indigestible carb, meaning it's going to make us feel more full and it's going to turn into it. Well, fiber doesn't even break down. But if we had fiber like the ones you're eating today, those are very slow to turn into sugar. That's the kind we want to have. And there's 4 calories in every gram of carbohydrate, no matter which kind it is, no matter it's sugar or it's lentils, 4 calories in every gram. So there's 4 calories in every gram of protein, and there's 9 calories in every gram of fat. So based on those numbers, why do we all think that carbs are so fattening? Well, we might eat more of them. Also, sometimes what they come with. So if we had a donut, that's a lot different than having a piece of whole wheat bread. So they might come with other things. So our brain, our heart, our nervous system, they all love carbs. So like you said, we need carbs, not just people with diabetes. We all need some carbs. That's what our body loves to run on. So we got to figure a way to work it out. So here's your little chemistry lesson for the day. So carbs are long chains of little carbons. And let me see, we saw this when we did fats too. And there's single sugars. That first one are single sugars, fructose, galactose, glucose. People, when you check your blood, you're checking your glucose. Those are just single sugars. And then we have some that are 2 sugars. Those must be the ones in the next row. So 2 sugars. These are still called simple carbs too, or simple sugars. This would be like fruit, table sugar. Table sugar would fit into that group. And so when it gets into our system, it breaks up. And then we have starch. That's the one up there on the right. It is chains of like hundreds and thousands. They're super long. And they might have a little arm that goes off too. So they might be branched chains. So those take a long time to break down. Not like those simple sugars. So our juice would be a simple sugar, right? Because it was fructose. And not only is it fructose, but we squeezed all the fiber out of it and we just had the juice. So that is like injecting sugar straight into your veins, which is perfect if you're having a low blood sugar reaction. But generally, we don't need to have that. Soda would kind of be the same way, although it's 2 sugars. And then we have glycogen. That's sugar that gets stored in our body. It's stored in our muscles and it's stored in our liver. So that's storage. So when we find our body thinks, oh, we're going a little low, we need some energy. It breaks down that glycogen. When you're out on your walk or you're working on the treadmill, that glycogen might be getting broken down a little bit to give you some energy. And then there's cellulose. That is the kind of carb that is in plants, that is fiber, that we don't break down at all. We don't have what we need to break it down. But you know who loves that stuff, who loves fiber, are the bacteria in our gut. That is their food. They love to eat fiber. And that is how we're going to keep good bacteria going in our gut. So just because somebody says carbs are bad, we don't want to give them up. There's still a lot of really good things about them. So which foods are the carbs? I've been kind of referencing that. We got healthy carbs. So these are the ones we want to focus on. Our fruits and vegetables. We got starchy vegetables. That would be like corn, peas, potatoes. Also sweet potatoes and winter squash fit in that group too. So those are still good carbs. They're a little higher in calorie, a little higher in carb. That doesn't make them bad. And then there's whole grains. And really, refined grains are also like, what would be a refined grain? White bread, white rice, white bread compared to whole wheat bread. They're both carbs, but a healthier, so that's why I had to put and refined grains. But whole grains are going to be the ones that have more fiber, that are going to be like these super long chains that are going to take a long time to turn into sugar in our bloodstream. And then we got some protein foods that are excellent for us because they're low in fat, that tend to have more fiber and are also considered carbs. We got our beans, our lentils, our split peas. And you know what? Our dairy and dairy substitutes also are considered carbs. So milk and dairy have lactose, which is the sugar that's in milk. And then carb choices to watch out for. So those are all good ones. But ones to watch out for are the processed ones, white flour stuff, processed stuff, those Oreos I keep referencing. Everybody's gonna want Oreos when you leave here today, sorry. Sweets, those are ones we don't want to have too much of. So if we're gonna choose good quality carbs in our whole grains are like the plant grows, the wheat grows out in the field, and then there's little kernels, and we pull those kernels off, or something does it for us, and then they take away this outer bran layer, the husk, and then they take away maybe the germ. That little germ is what feeds the plant. It's got a little fat in it. That's why when you look at your oatmeal back there, you're gonna see it has a little fat in it. That's because it's a whole grain and it has a little bit of the germ left. And then if we strip off the bran and the germ, then what we're left is the nice white flour that they call endosperm. So whole grains have all three of those. That's what we want to aim for. So an intact whole grain is what we want to aim for. So that means this is kind of the hierarchy. We have intact whole grain would be like how it grew out in the field. Quinoa, barley, groats. Anybody had groats before? It says oat groats, but it could also be buckwheat groats. Anybody had groats?
Mhm.
They take longer to cook than your normal oatmeal, but that's because they didn't peel everything off. We peeled some more stuff off even to make it our regular oat. Then you could also break up your grains like bulgur or cracked wheat. So they had the whole grain, but then they chopped it up a little bit. That's good. That's number 2. Number 3, rolled whole grains. That would be like our oatmeal. So they take those oats, they roll them out. And you know what? I would put your up there with broken whole grains. What's that other kind of
Steel
oats?
cut?
Thank you. Steel cuts. Yes.
Okay. What's steel cut?
Steel cut is when they just chop them up a little bit. They take your whole oat, but they just chop it up a little. They break it up. So it takes a little longer to cook than it does your rolled oats. What? Nutritionally, they're probably all very similar, but in this hierarchy, it's going to have more fiber and probably have a little bit more nutrients. But if you think I really don't love steel cut, or I don't have time to deal with steel cut, rolled are fine. I don't want you to feel bad about your choice. I have rolled oats every morning.
But you mean just not the quick or the instant?
Yeah, you know what happens to make them quick and instant is they chop them up even more. So they almost pre-digest it for you. And then they add a little salt to make it cook faster. And I'm really not encouraging the kind in the little packets. And really, rolled oats, you can make that in 2 minutes in your microwave.
Or overnight.
Or overnight. You what? Yes.
So set it up the night before and it cooks, for we like what's happening.
You're right. Absolutely. So we can do all this, and I should do a little more oat groats myself. In fact, I pulled out a jar today. I have of oat groats, and that I'm going to make those tomorrow. So I'm vowing to you, I'm going to have those tomorrow. Then sometimes when they take the whole grain and they shred it, that's like shredded wheat. Still good, right? Shredded wheat. It's not so great when you get the frosted shredded. Although those are yummy. And then if we grind it up, you make it into whole wheat flour. So if you take, what are the kernels of wheats? Wheat berries. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. I'm losing all my words today.
Drink some water.
It's tough getting old.
Drink some water.
Wheat berries. So that's how it grew out in the field. And then that's what they grind up to make whole wheat. So it is whole wheat, but it's a few levels down from the whole berry. And wheat berries are excellent. They're very fun. It's just a really sturdy like rice. And then we could flake it. So like if you had, bran flakes, or you puff it like Rice Krispies or puffed rice or those kind of things. So they just end up, the less intact it is, the less fiber it's going to have. There's a place for puffed whole grains, I think, because it increases your volume. If you like cold cereal, it makes you feel like you're getting a whole lot for fewer calories. So I think there's kind of a place for them. So what's your favorite whole grain? Anybody? Oatmeal,
Bulgur.
bulgur. Yeah, I like bulgur.
Buckwheat.
Buckwheat, okay, good. And you know, buckwheat, interestingly, it sounds like it should have gluten in it, but it does not. It's gluten-free. I love barley. And barley's been one to help lower your cholesterol.
Barley and oats.
Barley, well,
Barley and oats, that go good in with my milk.
that is true. It goes good in its milk, barley and oats. So a lot of times we tend to eat the same old whole grains. Well, I mean, we think we're doing good. Like brown rice we have out here, we have oatmeal. We might eat the same cereals. There's just a whole world of them to try. So I really encourage you to try a new grain. Most of them are not hard to cook. They just take a little bit longer. You know, like 45 minutes. Shout it out.
So between white rice and brown rice. And so we've kind of had this discussion at home
Yeah,
because there's something in the brown rice that's maybe not digestible.
people are worried about the arsenic in the rice.
That's it.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts about that?
It depends on what kind of rice you're getting. Remember, we had this discussion about a month or so ago. If you're getting our local rice here, what's that company, Lundberg? Lundberg, then we can be free of it. But brown rice does have more arsenic than the white. But you could also soak it. You can cook it in like 5 times as much water as normal and drain it, and that gets rid of it. But to be honest, white rice and brown rice don't have a huge difference in fiber. It's like from 0 to 2.
So if you prefer the white, just.
Get your fiber somewhere else, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah, but I think,
That's what I do. I can't see it.
yeah, see, there you go.
see.
Or if you don't like long grain brown rice, maybe you would like the brown jasmine rice.
Jasmine
Or
rice.
that's, I love that one. Yeah.
It should be fine, brown rice and sushi.
And then there's wild rice.
And then there's wild rice, which is really a grass.
Yeah.
Yes. So all of those are good. I encourage you to try something new this time. Oh, why I put this, because I can't read it here. I gotta look up there. Okay, this, I just thought it was interesting. This was, there's some starch that you digest really rapidly, and then some that's slower to digest, and some that's resistant to being digested, resistant starch. So particularly if we're trying to help our gut or we're trying to lower our blood sugars, choosing more of these resistant rices are better. So super quick to digest carbs or starch would be like in your processed foods and your white rice and your white bread and snacks. We don't want to have those too often. But our slowly digested starches, and that would be like, oh my goodness, that sounds like a little Christmas song. What we want to do, they don't raise your blood sugar as high. And people are always a little worried about potatoes. If you actually cook your potatoes, let them cool, and then you use them, it increases the slowness of their digestibility. I don't know if you have time for that. I rarely do, but it happens.
I've heard that with white rice too. You could like cook it,
Mhm.
cool it, refrigerate it, and just reheat it.
And then it might take longer to digest. And then there's resistant starch down the bottom. So this would be things that are hard, our gut can digest them, but really that's for the bacteria in our gut. They're the ones that love it. So what do we say? That doesn't raise your blood sugar as much. So raw bananas, well, we generally eat bananas raw, but milled grains, cornflakes, cooked items like whole grain bread are more resistant starch. So we like resistant starch when we can.
Excuse me,
Yes.
do you really need grains in your diet, or can you just, vegetables, fruit, and whatever else you eat? Only because the cooking aspect I find off-putting.
Okay, all right, I hear you. All right, so you don't need to have them, but studies have shown their health benefits for lowering risk of heart disease, the fiber in them, for helping with diabetes. So they're good for you.
But they're fiber in vegetables.
True, true.
So you could avoid it.
You could, but you could also find some quick cooking or easy ways to have some, like quinoa takes 15 minutes. If you have Instapot, it's 2 minutes. You could get those, oh, you don't? Oh. It's just the best thing ever.
Okay, that's a whole class.
We did a class on that a long time ago. Instapot is just a multitask cooker. So it'll pressure cook, and so it
Okay.
cooks faster.
Okay,
So there are faster cooking grains. You can buy brown rice that's already been cooked and frozen or vacuum sealed. So it just takes a second to cook too. So there's quicker ways to do some of those.
You might want to address getting enough fiber if you're not eating the whole grains.
That's true, because we want to have, 30 to, well, 25 to 35, let's say, grams of fiber a day. So eating fruits and vegetables, you might get it, but these are a little more powerhouses. But if you're eating some beans, those are a real powerhouse.
Also, the fiber helps with moving stuff through the digestive tract.
This is very true. This is very true. So hold on to that thought. I bet we'll talk about that.
Oh,
No, that's okay. So fiber is a carb. It's indigestible part of the plants. So we love that. It's what your moms called roughage. And there's fruits and veggies have it, beans, lentils, split peas, our nuts and seeds. I mean, all our plant foods have it. So we do want to get it. And there's two types of fiber. So there's insoluble and soluble. And I think my next slides show a little bit of the difference. Okay. So soluble fiber helps lower your cholesterol. And it does that because it attracts water and forms like a gel in our guts. And then that makes us feel more full, number one. And then it carries stuff out. So we excrete it really, including our cholesterol. And the bile that our body pulls in order to digest, that is made from cholesterol. So if it helps us go to the bathroom and it grabs it, then it pulls it out. Now we've got to make new cholesterol. So we're kind of, instead of recycling our cholesterol, we make new. So we love to have soluble fiber. That's oats, beans, barley, and fruits and vegetables in general. And then there's insoluble fiber. That attracts water, but doesn't really mix with it. So here's my own example. Some of you have been here before, you've seen this, so you know the secret. But let's say this is some fiber. This is insoluble fiber right here, and it kind of looks like it actually. So it gets into our gut. It's going to attract water, but it's not going to really mix it. It's not going to make a gel like our soluble. So it increases in size. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this magic? It's magic. So what insoluble fiber does is it increases stool bulk. It makes our stool softer and easier to pass. So we love insoluble. You don't have to start counting all this stuff. We just want to eat a good variety of lots of plant foods, and we're going to get everything that we need. Fiber helps us to feel more full. So then we don't have to eat as much. It helps with weight loss. And you know what? A lot of people are on those weight loss medications right now, which are injectables. And what those do is they make you feel more full. So you don't want to eat as much. Fiber does the same thing. So we don't need to take a shot every week to make that happen. Although if you like that and that works for you, that's okay. No judgment. The fiber helps to slow our blood sugar rise because here we got to break off all these little things, and the fiber part of the carbs don't even get digested, and the bacteria just work on them like crazy. So fiber helps to lower our risk of some cancers like colon cancer, and it decreases transit time, which is sort of a double negative. It means it slows down how fast things get through our system. It breaks down, all these things break down. This is fiber, breaks down to this butyrate stuff, and that butyrate helps to inhibit tumor growth. So we love our fiber for that. It helps lower risk of breast cancer, might bind with the estrogen that could be a risk factor. It helps lower our risk of prostate cancer and mouth, esophageal, and throat. So everything in our GI tract. So we love to have fiber. Oh, I did have a separate slide. I forgot. So our soluble fiber forms that gel, like I said. Oats, beans, barley, pears, apples, psyllium. Is anybody's taken Metamucil? That's a soluble fiber. It blocks cholesterol from being absorbed into the intestines. So we love to have that kind. And then there's our insoluble. So travels through the digestive tract, increases stool bulk, things move through properly. And it actually does the opposite. It actually increases our transit time. So things move through faster. So then a lot of things we eat might be even little cancer producing things. And so it keeps things moving. If they're in our gut a long time, they're bouncing off all those cells in our gut, and they might increase our risk of cancer. So it moves things through fast. Whole grains, so mostly wheat for our insoluble fiber, and fruits and vegetables, beans and lentils, those cross over to both, and nuts and seeds. So as far as carbs go, what's a serving size? Because people think, oh, I shouldn't have too many carbs. So one slice of bread would be one serving of carb. And one serving, if you have diabetes, they probably taught you at carb counting, is 15 grams of carb. People with diabetes often will count their carbs because they're on a low carb budget. So if it was a hot dog bun or a hamburger bun or an English muffin, it's a top and a bottom. That counts as 2. So 1/2 is a serving. That makes sense? A 1/3 cup of rice, pasta, quinoa, barley, 1/2 cup of your oats or hot cereal, 3/4 cup of a cold cereal, most cold cereals. And then fruit is generally like a tennis ball size piece of fruit. You know, isn't it hard to find a tennis ball size piece of fruit? The apples are like 2. Yeah, it's hard to find that. Half a banana too would actually truly be a serving if we're counting our carbs. About a cup of cut up fruit, 1/2 a cup of juice if we're gonna have juice, 2 tablespoons of dried fruit.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
what about them cuties over there in the bowl?
those are a perfect little size.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes if they're small enough, you could have 2 would be a serving. Yeah, those persimmons are pretty healthy size looking over there. I'd say those are 1, but the cuties probably 2. So then in the dairy world, remember lactose is carb. So 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of soy milk, 3/4 cup of a light yogurt. And then our starchy vegetables, corn, potatoes, peas, winter squash. Oh, sorry, 1/2 cup for corn, potatoes, peas, but a cup would be a serving of your winter squash. And then 1/2 cup of beans and lentils. That's a serving. And you know, if we're following a whole food plant-based diet, we don't have to worry about that stuff so much. We just eat till we're satisfied. We get a variety of plant foods and we're good. And then sweets, of course, we have way too many of those. Just as a reference, 4 grams of carb on your label is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of sugar. So I don't know if anybody has a can of soda around here, but that's like 11 teaspoons of sugar. We generally eat way too much, 20 teaspoons of added sugar a day.
I have
Yes.
a question. What are your thoughts about carb counting, net carb versus?
Okay. So in fact, this is a great time to bring that up. Thank you. If everybody has a label, so, or share if you ended up not with a label. So she's asking about net carbs. So I just told you that if you're eating carbs and it has fiber, that fiber doesn't digest. So when you consider net carbs, that means they subtracted the fiber from the total grams of carbs. So if you're looking at your labels, look at total grams of carb. And remember, that's per that serving size that's listed on the label. And then if there's fiber in it, say, who has fiber in any of there? Your Ezekiel must.
It has 6 grams of fiber.
Okay, so net carbs, they would subtract that 6. How about yours?
2 grams.
Of fiber? Okay, so that's in your 7-grain bread. Okay, how about the oats? 4. Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, what do you mean that? So the 27 carbs above that is really 31?
So net it's kind of a made up word. And it's what they put on labels, especially when they were trying to do the high protein diets, all those that were trying to not eat carbs, the Atkins diet and all those. They said, okay, if you eat this product, it's got fill in the blank, how many grams of carb? Okay, and then how many grams of fiber? Okay, so if you subtract 4 from 27, it's 23 net carbs. Those net carbs are the ones that are get digested. So it made products sell basically because look, this hardly has any carb. Atkins is still doing it. I see those Rob Lowe commercials all the time. And so they're still doing it. But the truth is, it's not really a legal statement. It's not something that should really even be allowed on the label. And the truth is, even if it's fiber, we'll probably get about half of those grams of carb. So I don't generally teach people to do that because I don't want them to choose some lousy item because it's got a little less carb. I guess that's why. And when I talk with other diabetes educators, they're not pushing it as much as we used to. If people are on insulin, it could really and you're adjusting your insulin based on how many carbs you're eating, it might be an important factor. But
No, sorry.
no, okay.
Diabetes, carbs are you allowed to eat?
Well, I'm just so glad you asked that. Okay, here we go. All right, and this is allowed isn't the right word really, because it makes it sound so harsh. It's you kind of have go with a guideline. And if someone has diabetes and they are on a medicine and they take that pill every day, we do want to be consistent. I think consistent is a better word. So for the ladies, it's about 30 to 45 grams of carb per meal. Now remember those serving size I showed you were 1 serving each 15 grams. So it's like 2 or 3 servings of carb at every meal for the ladies. Guys, you get 3 or 4, 45 to 60 grams. Now remember, if you're going whole food plant-based, you might be able to get away with a lot more than that and be on less medicine. But that's generally how they do it. And you look at your labels to see whole food plant-based diet, and my little note at the bottom, often you don't require counting carbs. In case you're listening to those, podcasts and they say, oh, I never count carbs. That's why.
35, 45% of good guideline for everybody, per meal.
In general, it depends on your activity level, and it does depend on your gender. And like if you're more active, you get more, but we generally, if you're taking that same pill every day for diabetes, we want to eat about the same amount of carbs because it doesn't know that you went hog wild at breakfast. And so your blood sugar is going to go too high. So being consistent throughout the day is really important.
So,
Sure.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's nice to have the carbs that can be digested at that time for the insulin to not overwhelm the system.
So he's talking about, take insulin and it works for a certain amount of hours. So you're saying you want to have carbs that last a while? Yes, so that last a while.
Start stacking.
Mm-hmm. Because then your next meal, you're right. Your next meal, you take your insulin and then you still have some left over. You end up going too low. You're right. So on your label, and everybody's been kind of looking at their labels, there's a few things I wanted to just point out on some of the labels. You guys had cereal. You guys, I see you're packing up and that's okay. But on those labels of breads, I just want to point out on whole grains, because I don't think I have a slide that says this. Also on the label, you look at your ingredients list. And to be a whole grain on your ingredients list, it should be a whole grain. It should say 100% whole wheat or stone ground whole wheat or barley. But a lot of times we see 7 grain on our cereal and we think, oh my gosh, this is going to have so much fiber. It's going to be so good for me. But really, it's white flour. Enriched wheat flour is the first ingredient, which is a carb, but no fiber in it. And then they add 7 little grains. So it ends up being lower in fiber than my Dave's Killer Bread. Who has my Dave's Killer Bread? Oh, you have it right there. You have that one too. Yeah. So it's made all whole grains in it, starting even with the first one. So you do want to beware. Roman meal, who grew up on Roman meal? I did. So that's like a white flour that they put like molasses in and put it in a brown bag, and we think it's whole wheat. So just beware. Okay. So thank you for looking at your label. So we're planning our carbs and we're looking at our plate is almost all carbs, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. We have a fruit and vegetable at every meal. We have an intact whole grain at every meal. if we want to. We have a little protein at every meal. So here's our breakfast carbs. Maybe there's some bread. Maybe we have some oatmeal. Maybe we have some cold cereal. Maybe we have potatoes. Maybe we have milk, or I put a plant-based milk up here. We have our fruits. Those might be our breakfast carbs. And then at lunch, our carbs. Maybe we're, kind of like what we had today, a little casserole with beans and rice. Or we might have a bread or a sandwich, 2 pieces of whole wheat bread. Maybe we will have a salad, and maybe we put some beans on those salad for our protein. Maybe we have some tortillas or a taco or a burrito or an enchilada, or any of those things might be our carbs. And then for dinner, maybe our carbs are going to be, well, kind of similar. So there's some enchiladas, there's our tacos, we've got pasta. Who has a pasta box out there? So pastas now, I mean, white flour pasta is a carb, that's what we often make, semolina wheat flour. But now they make whole wheat, and they make some out of beans and lentils. How much is that one? How much fiber do we have in there?
3%.
So,
But that's out of 42 grams per serving of only 2 ounces.
okay, thank you for that. So on our labels, it will say how many grams of that item, like a carb or protein or whatever, and then there'll be a percentage, and that's the percent daily value. So that means for all the carbs you should have all day, you just ate 3% of them. And then how's our brown rice?
In what?
And look at total grams of carb.
39.
Okay, 39. And then how many grams of fiber?
And
2. Yeah, see, brown rice is a fiber powerhouse, but it does have a little more than our white rice. Thank you for looking at your label. So the bottom line is we do need to have carbs, but we want to make good quality carb choices. So aim for whole real foods, not those Oreos and those plant-based Reese's cups, which I haven't found yet. I've only heard about them, but I actually can't wait till I find them. But have high fiber, intact grains. They're going to raise your blood sugar more slowly. If you have diabetes, you might need to budget your carbs a little bit more. We might need to be consistent throughout the day. We might need to count our carbs so we can adjust our insulin based on how much we're having. So testing before and after a meal will let you know how those carbs did. And I can't tell you how many people would tell me, you told me to eat oatmeal and it made my blood sugar go up. But you know, it's supposed to. We just don't want it to go up too much. It's a good whole food. And I love these continuous glucose monitors that people are wearing and using. I love those so much because you can learn so much. But also sometimes people are using them who don't have diabetes, and they're thinking, oh, I'm not going to touch oatmeal. It made my blood sugar go up 20 points. Well, you know, before a meal, our blood sugar should be like 100. And after meals, should stay below 140. So we got some room to play with there. So it's okay to have your blood sugar go up a little bit, especially if it was something very appropriate.
Question.
Yes.
I'm not understanding all of this, but so I'm a woman, so I could have 40 grams of carbohydrates.
45 per meal,
per meal.
not all day.
Okay, so a serving size of this is a half a cup,
Okay,
and that's 39 grams.
okay.
So that's all I can have for lunch.
No, that's the only carb. If we're counting our carbs, you could have that, but then also what you could have with that is all the veggies in the world. And maybe a protein. And if we included a protein powerhouse, a fiber powerhouse, I should say, like beans, that's not going to affect our blood sugar very much at all. And that could be your protein on that. Or tofu. See, that wouldn't have any carbs if you are into tofu. Or lean chicken or fish, or if we're eating that. Let's see, anything else? Oh, this was just my recipe. We kind of already talked about it. But it's kind of just a Southwest casserole that you just dumped in there. And so it had beans. You could swap the beans, you could swap the grain, you could swap the vegetables, you could add more vegetables. You just took that broth, cooked it up with a little salsa just to make it boiling, and then I poured it over the whole thing, put a foil on it, and cooked it. And you want to tell us about your soup?
Oh, the lentil soup with the Nepalis. It was really easy to make. I threw in a can of roasted tomatoes and canned tomato sauce. I grilled up some fresh onion and put some fresh garlic in at the tail end and seasoned it with paprika, white pepper, and ground powdered garlic. So it was good.
Thank you for making that.
Yeah.
It was really good. I want to
Yeah.
make that. Okay, any questions? Anybody fearful of carbs anymore? We know we should have some, yes?
So is basically the one, what you're talking about is simple and complex carbs, or is that something different?
No, and that's, so simple would be our one or two, like table sugar or fruit. And then complex carbs would be those super long strings. So those would be, and simple are fine too. I'm not telling you not to eat fruit, but you know, so many people with diabetes think they can't eat fruit. And you know, it's okay. It's not, it doesn't affect our blood sugar like just drinking straight juice does.
So when Krispy Kreme's came to Sacramento, didn't people say, oh, I can't have that because of the carbs, but that's the bad part, right? Was that simple?
That's what I would put, oh, that's just so many that's got some starch in it because it's flour, and then it's got some simple because it's got sugar all over it, or maybe there's jelly inside. And it's fried. So there's nothing really good about it. But it's all the kinds of carb except fiber. No fiber in there. But thank you for bringing that up.
No, I remember that when they first came, people said, well, they weren't going to do it because of the carb, they're watching their carbs.
Yeah,
So that's the kind of carbs you want to watch.
those are the junky carbs, plus they're fried. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes, got a question over here. Sourdough is a white flour bread, but we add that sour and that changes the glycemic index a little, meaning it doesn't raise your blood sugar as much. So actually it can be very good. Sourdough is great. So one slice would be one serving of carb or 15 grams. Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a big distinction.
I made chips and salsas like
Yes.
they got. I buy these things at Costco, it's about 5 pounds for $5. It's cheaper than dirt. I read, for chips they are.
The big bag of chips
The big bag.
at Costco. I know it. I'm familiar. Okay.
But, at any rate, I looked at the ingredients on that the other day. I really didn't want to look at it. I didn't.
Okay.
In any case, I read the ingredients. They said whole corn, I think soybean oil,
Uh-huh.
and they threw and some such as salt. Well, those are the only three ingredients in those. I assume that the soybean oil is probably, sure, I doubt it's baked, but in any case, it's soybean oil.
Yes.
And on the scale of relatively healthy and relatively unhealthy, what is that big bag rate?
Okay, so the question is, how are our chips? And you know, that big bag Costco, it doesn't matter if you're getting that or you're getting the ones at your grocery store. They're all the same. It starts out as a whole grain. It's a corn tortilla.
Yeah.
And then they cut it up and then they fry it.
Uh-huh.
So it's still a whole grain. We can't take that away from it. But it's got lots of extra calories and fat, which aren't so great for our heart or our waistline. So you want to count it. One chip is 1 gram of carb.
Oh.
So you don't eat out of that bag, especially not that bag. And you count out what you want and you have them, but you could also make your own. You know, you can cut them up, stick them in the oven, and bake them. So they're so.
How about if you cut up a tortilla and then spray it like with the avocado spray
Yes,
and then toaster oven it?
totally. So
I've-
you're just
I've
making
done
your own.
that.
That's a great idea.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. You just have to keep an eye on them if you're making your own, because they go from bendable to black in a second. So you gotta keep an eye on them. But yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's try, so your homework is to try a new grain. Try a new grain. Be brave. Oh, you did.
On your phone.
Oh, let's see. Oh, let's just see. Thank you. You know it's not gonna be good. Thanks, Paul.
I don't know what's doing it.